You can probably remember when you were a kid, your parents teaching you stranger danger. I remember when I was a kid and I had that drilled into my head. As a matter of fact, when I was in elementary school, the teacher left us in the hallway at our elementary school, like 4 or 5 of us. And this woman came up to us and she said that the teacher wanted us to go with her to go get an ice cream across the street. Well, we all knew this was suspicious. And thanks to the teaching, I'm here today. I never remember seeing that woman ever in my life, and I never saw her again. Even though there's a lot of stories about very dangerous people, and there are, you have a right to be cautious. There are some times when strangers have stepped in and actually saved someone they didn't even know. Here are just a few examples that I found of strangers doing just that. I got on the 1 train here, and a man got on after me. This happens everywhere. I had my keys between my hands, but barely noticeable because this guy's been standing behind me for a whole 6 minutes. Even before we got on the train, he kept pestering me, calling me baby, and stuff like that. When I got in the train, I sat down, and he sat over me holding the bar. I felt so anxious, like throwing up. So I stood up near a bunch of other people holding the rail. Then this guy came up to me and said, "Hey Lauren, are you going to Jeff's dinner party too?" I was confused for a few seconds, because he was staring at me, and my name isn't Lauren. It took me like 10 seconds. Then I realized what he was doing, so I said yeah. And he said, "Perfect timing, we can walk together. What stop are you getting off on?" I told him. Then he said to look at what Jeff texted him, and he handed me his phone. He had an app pulled up where he had a note where it said, "Are you okay?" And he kind of moved to the side so I could write on it. I told him that this guy was following me. He ended up getting off on my stop and walked me all the way to my friend's apartment when he was supposed to get off a lot later. The guy that was pestering me soon left, mostly because this guy that was helping was way bigger, thankfully. I've never been in a spot like this before, and I've always told myself what I would do in a situation like that, but I just froze and shut down. I am so thankful that a man like him was out there and aware of the situation. In New York, most people keep to themselves. I was at a bar, and some burly guy decided to get real aggressive, like trap your princess in the corner aggressive. I was trying to work my way out of the situation when this tiny woman came over. All of a sudden she whips out this huge New York attitude, screaming and pushing this guy for talking to her girlfriend like that. She got him to apologize and buy me a beer. We hung out. It was pretty great. It was my first year at university. A guy would not leave me alone in a bar. Started with dancing near me, then dancing on me by rubbing up against me. He followed me to the bar, so I went to the restroom, and he just waited outside. I was in a big group of people, but we really didn't know each other, so I guess they thought I knew this stranger. So I'm in the bathroom, and I got tears in my eyes because I'm freaking out. The bathroom attendant sits me down, gives me a lollipop, and asks me to describe one of my friends. She finds them and explains what's going on. When I come out of the bathroom, they're all there and immediately create a human wall separating this guy from me. He starts kicking off, and they began to walk as a group towards the exit, forcing him towards the bouncer. They quickly kicked him out because he was trying to start a fight. One night in college, I was walking home. I was in the nightlife area of the campus. It was only a couple of blocks to my apartment. Some guy in his 30s asked to bum a cigarette, which led him to ask, "So, what's going on tonight, beautiful? You busy? You got a boyfriend?" Me being young and afraid to anger this strange man, I sort of played along. I was uncomfortable. I was trying to break away, but I wanted to play it off naturally. At one point, someone rode past me on their bike. They slowed down and stopped about half a block up. They turned around and they stared at us. It was too dark to see their face or who they were. but we could both see that he was there. They stuck around until the guy finally left me alone. I'll forever be grateful for the person who's just watching out for a stranger. I recently heard a story that my friend told me. She was getting followed to work, and this was early in the morning. She started to freak out, and she walked up to a fruit cart where a man was working. She told him that she was being followed by this creep. The fruit cart man, he started screaming at this guy, throwing bananas at him. New York City rolls deep. Something like this just happened to me. I was standing at the bus stop, and a clearly troubled guy with a cane came up and stood beside me. He seemed very angry. I'm pregnant, so I noped right out of there and went and stood away from him. He comes screaming after me and pointing his cane at me and banging it on nearby trash cans. All the while he was yelling that I ruined his day every day. I was scared, but I tried to remain calm, and I asked him to stop several times. Then suddenly this guy appears. He comes up beside me and looks at me and says, "Are you okay?" The screaming guy saw him, and he walked away. The guy stood calmly beside me until the bus came, and when I left, he said, "Hope your day gets better." I was, and am, so thankful for him. I come from a chaotic upbringing. I was born and raised as a child in South Korea. I later moved to Australia with my mother, having lost my father in a homicide. The next few years, my life in Australia was difficult. Meeting and making friends was very difficult. Since I was quite nerdy, I did not speak much English, something that most Australian kids at the time could not relate to. One of my scariest memories was when I was 12 years old. At the time, it did not even occur to me just how close I was to potentially losing my life. My mother and I were on a road trip. We were heading south from Melbourne to stay on the southern coast. We stopped one evening at a small, well-kept caravan park. The caravan park was quaint, but it was beautiful. It had neat grass, nice flowers, and a small creek that ran along the edge of the premises. It reminded me of home. I spent some of my time walking around on my own, as my mother was taking a nap. I discovered a game and pool room. I went inside, and I spent probably a good few hours playing pool by myself. I was generally just mucking about. When a young boy comes in, I was very shy, and so was he, but we eventually talked for a little while, and we became friendly. I don't remember playing any games with him, but I do recall him being pretty nervous. He kept asking me if I wanted to go home with him to his caravan, as his parents were making dinner soon. At first, I was not interested, so I said no. We spent some time doing things and talking as it got later. He became more pushy and asked if I liked cake and lollies. "Of course," I said. That much I do remember. I followed him to his caravan, which was much older than ours, and it was quite dilapidated. He asked me to wait outside while he talked to his parents. I waited patiently for a few minutes until the door opened. Then a larger, older man with glasses and no shirt opened the door and asked if I'd like to come inside for cake. I was scared, but I remember feeling like I had to, like it would be rude to leave. As I was walking in the door, I heard a man behind me shout out, "Hey, what's going on here?" I was quickly grabbed by the collar. I'm pretty sure it was a dress, actually, and I was pulled inside. The man quickly tried to lock the door behind me. However, the stranger was too quick, and he burst in the door. He took my hand abruptly and pulled me outside, and we frantically ran away. The man asked me which unit or caravan I was from, and he took me straight there. We went inside, and my mom yelled at him, asking him why he was there. I was hiding in the corner crying, while he explained what happened. We packed up that night, and we left immediately. I was already heavily on anxiety medication after what happened back home. We never spoke about it alone again. My mother claimed it was something that I should talk about to my therapist. Every time we spoke about it, my mother would leave the room. It scared the hell out of her. I didn't understand why. I guess at that age, it's difficult for the brain to comprehend the reality and the potential of the situation. Looking back on it now, it utterly scares me to the point of losing sleep. I was standing alone at a train station. I was waiting for my sister. A creepy old man came over, and he started speaking to me in English, telling me that he knew my dad. Most of the people were white where I live, but I'm brown, and so was he. He probably thought that would trick me. I said I didn't believe him, because he couldn't tell me what country or town my dad was from. He was pestering me for a long time, constantly trying to convince me to go with him, and to get into his car. First he tried to lie about my dad. Then he tried to lure me in with various goods, like candy, soda, and food. I keep telling him no, and that I wasn't allowed to talk to strangers. I even lied, and said I was waiting for my older sister. I was actually waiting for my twin. He gradually stood closer and closer to me, grabbing my arm. I was so scared, even more so because English isn't my first language, so I was intimidated as well. Anyway, a woman close by must have been listening to our conversation, because suddenly she stepped over and hugged me, and she says to the man that she is my older sister, and that he had to leave now. At this point, I've been trying to get rid of the man for about a half an hour, while he got more and more aggressive, so I was so grateful for this woman. The irony is, there was a police station under the train station, in which the woman took me to. I told the officer there my story. The officer told me that they'd look into it, and that I had to tell my parents when I got home, so they could call the station about it. I remember feeling like they didn't even take me seriously. The woman waited for me until my actual sister arrived. Thank God. When I did get home, I told my mom about it, and she said something along the line of, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." She never called the police, or even considered how serious the situation was. Only recently, about 10 years after it happened, she admitted that she should have called the police. I was 17, and this guy, maybe in his 50s, started talking to me while I waited for the train. All I wanted to do was read my book, but I was too polite to ignore him. By the time we get on the train, I realized I made a mistake. I could smell the beer on him, and he put his arm around me, heavy as a rock. He kept trying to kiss me. Actually, he did. Fortunately on the cheek, because I turned away. He followed me through my transfer, even though I tried to lose him. By this point, I'm terrified. I'm just waiting for a signal on my phone so I can call my dad. Well, a different man noticed my distress, and he started asking if I was okay, but I was scared, and I didn't want a scene. They were persistent though, and finally asked, "Do you know him?" I told him no, so all the guys grabbed this guy and pushed him off the train, loudly making sure that everyone knew not to let him back on. I wish so much that I knew who they were, so I could tell them how much it meant to me. I think that's why I tell this story whenever I can, in hopes that maybe one day I can thank them all, and that it can encourage others to protect those who look scared. I've had so many bad experiences with random men, but this is always a reminder that all men is a fallacy. So to you strangers from years ago, I still thank you. Thank you for joining me for this edition of The Creeper. It's good to see people helping out complete strangers and being aware of their surroundings. It's so easy to ignore a situation like that because you don't want confrontation, but you could be saving someone's life. We're all in this together, and we need to be able to look out for each other. Thank you for listening. I want to give a special thanks to my patrons. Your help is greatly appreciated. Until next time, this is Dallas, signing off.